day. It is Wednesday. It is lunchtime. It is time to hop back into the Gospel of Mark. So here we go. We begin in verse 1. And the Pharisees and some of the scribes gathered around him when they had come from Jerusalem and had seen that some of his disciples were eating their bread with impure hands, that is, unwashed. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they carefully wash their hands, thus observing the traditions of the elders. And when they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they cleanse themselves, and there are many other things which they have received in order to observe, such as the washing of cups and pitchers and copper pots. Side note there, okay. The Pharisees and the scribes ask him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the traditions of the elders, but eat bread with impure hands?" But he said to them, "Rightly did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far away from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the precepts of men. Neglecting the commandment of God, you hold to the traditions of men.'" All right, so this is one of those times where let's just sort of set ourselves back in the first century mindset here. The Jews, the religious leaders had these traditions that you have to wash your hands before you eat. Let's just go ahead and say, I'm okay with that. But here's what they say. It makes your hands impure. It's not just that, you had dirty hands. You probably shouldn't do that for sanitary reasons. They're saying, no. It makes you religiously and spiritually impure to do so. So they're taking this to a whole nother level here. Like you and I say, hey, go wash your hands, then come to dinner. I tell my kids that all the time. No, they're saying, no, you do this way. And so actually in verses 3 to 4, we start seeing, hey, here are some of the traditions that they observe. Here's how we have to be pure, and here's what it means to be pure. If we do all these external things, this is how we're pure. But Jesus then comes back into it and just lays right into them. Look what he says in verse 6. He calls them hypocrites. All right, that's probably not the thing you want to hear anybody saying to you, but that's what they're saying. All right, he goes, this people honors me with their lips, the things that they say, their external things, but look what he says, their hearts are far from me. In vain they worship me, and they teach as doctrines those things that God has given. They teach the things that they believe. They're man-centered kind of practices as if God had taught them. So here's what he's going at. You are masters. You are masters of external obedience. But the problem is you're missing heart obedience. That's basically as clear cut as I can give it to you. You can go through the external motions all you want to, but right now what you're missing is the heart that's following. You're just following the traditions. You're trying to show, here's all the ways that I go about making sure that my life is pure. I wash my hands. I wash the copper pots. I do all this. He says, but you're missing some other things. And he's actually going to get into some of those things. He says, right now you're holding on to your earthly traditions of what it means, but you're not following God with your heart. And this is really where Jesus comes head on into the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He just bumping right onto them, and it just creates a clash. I mean, you want to talk about clash here? This is one of those times. And he's pulling on Isaiah the prophet because he's saying this isn't a new problem. You've been doing this for a long time. You've been about this problem for a good while now. And this is where we have to sit back and say, yeah, that's a problem. And so what does this tell us about Jesus? Well, I think one of the things we can sit back and say is Jesus doesn't care, isn't really overly concerned about all the things that we can do to kind of look better in his sight. All our religious kind of practices that we think make us look good. Now, obviously, there are some things that he tells us to do, but if we're making up rules like, I don't do this and I don't do that, he's not really concerned about that unless it's really grounded in something he's told us to do. But what does it tell us about ourselves? Well, it tells us we have a really, really stellar ability to come in and make up rules to make ourselves look better. How many people have you seen who says, you shouldn't do that because it's bad. Guess what? I don't do that, so I must be a better person. Yeah, that's what we do. That's our own fallenness. So what's it call us to? What does this passage call us to? It calls us to not be like that. It calls us to examine where our hearts are far from God because of our own traditions. All right, guys, there's a lot to chew on there. I want to pray that you would have a great day and dig into that, and I will see you back here tomorrow.